In this video, you're going to learn how to get the best price for your next cruise. I'm Gary Bembridge of Tips for Travelers. I'm going to share with you a series of tips on how you can get an amazing price for your next cruise. Tip number 1. The two best times to book are either very early or very late. So when cruise lines launch new itineraries and announce the itineraries for the coming years, they normally launch those with deals, incentives. So there might be upgrades, there might be extra onboard credit, they might include things like drinks packages or excursions, but they will normally have various incentives and deals to get people to book early. So when itineraries are launched, that's a great time to find a great cruise price. After that, the next best time is after 90 days and the day of sailing. Basically what happens with cruises is you have to pay your final balance either 90 days or 60 days and the day of sailing. So at that point, the cruise line knows how many cabins they've got left. And then what they work to do is to get rid of all of those cabins. If there's lots of capacity, they will start to slash prices to sell all those cabins because they want to sail full. That's very important because they also make a lot of money once you're on board. So very early when itineraries are launched, there'll be a window of time, and then after 90 to 60 days and the day of sailing, that is when you're likely to get the best cruise deals possible. The second key thing to getting a great cruise deal is flexibility. The more flexible you are, the better the price you're going to pay. So if you know that there's a specific itinerary on a specific date, on a specific ship, in a specific cabin, that is a chance that you're going to pay the highest amount for your fare because you're very, very fixed. However, if you're very flexible, if you're very open, you're going to find a much better price. So what do I mean by flexibility? Well, first of all, choose a broad region. So whether that's the Caribbean, whether it's the Mediterranean, whether it's Alaska, bearing in mind that most cruise lines in those regions will have very similar itineraries. The second thing you need to look at is when you want to go. So if you've just got a broad period of time you want to go, so it's any time in a particular month, then again, you're likely to find great cruise deals because you're going to be able to move around between ships and dates that really have the best deals. The third thing is if you're not fixed on a particular cruise line. So if you're quite happy to go on any cruise line or perhaps a small group of cruise lines, so if you like resort type cruises, you might want to have a little bundle between Norwegian or Caribbean, perhaps some of the MSC ships, or perhaps you're looking at a boutique ship, so you're looking more at your Seabourn, your Silver Sea, your Regent Seven Sea, your Hapag-Lloyd. And also importantly is you're flexible about the cabin. So the cheapest cabin that you're going to find, whether you want to go for an inside cabin, ocean view, a balcony cabin, or even a suite, is instead of choosing a very specific cabin, you go for what's known as a guaranteed cabin. So whatever level you are, you basically don't book a very specific cabin, you book a guaranteed cabin. The cruise line allocates the specific cabin. So flexibility is very important. So if you broadly know you want to go to Alaska, for example, sometime in May or June, you don't really mind which cruise line, and you're really clear about, I want an inside or a suite, but I don't really mind which cabin it is. So if you have that degree of flexibility, as you start to look for prices and deals, you have a huge and wide range of options. So you're going to find the best price. So flexibility is really the secret to getting a great cruise deal. Now the third tip is about when you want to go. So if you want to cruise in the key school summer vacations, or you want to cruise at Christmas, you're going to be paying the highest prices going because there is huge amounts of demand. The secret is choose what's known as the shoulder season. So that's the beginning and end of a season. This is when the prices are going to be sharpest. So for example, if you're going to Alaska, you want to go at the very beginning of the season, so you might want to go around May time, you want to go at sort of August time. Now if you want to go to the Mediterranean or Caribbean, the secret is to go at the beginning and the end of the seasons again. So for example, March, April time, September, October time, and similarly for the Caribbean, because that's when most of the ships will move between the Caribbean and the Mediterranean. They redeploy at the changeover of those two seasons. You need to avoid peak times, so it's the summer school holidays, it's also Christmas, and also the big holiday weekends like Easter and Thanksgiving. Now my next tip in terms of getting a great cruise deal is get them sent to you. And there's two things that I really strongly recommend you do. The first of all is for any cruise line that you're interested in, sign up for their email newsletter. And whenever there's a deal, whenever there's a promotion, they send those out by email. Another thing I strongly recommend you do is sign up for the newsletters from cruise aggregators. So these are sites which bring together all the cruise deals that are going from all the different cruise lines all around the world. And these are great because then in one email, you will get lots of suggestions for lots of different cruise lines. Sometimes they have deals that you won't get anywhere else because these are big sellers of cruises, and so they sometimes get special deals. The three of them that I find really helpful helpful are ROL Cruise. They tend to be much more UK based. There's Travel Zoo. Another great one is also Cruise Direct, and they claim that no one beats their price. Now my next tip is, once you've booked a cruise, keep an eye out for what that particular cruise is selling for. If you find the price has dropped, the cruise line is not going to tell you. What you need to do is get hold of the cruise lines and point out that the price has shifted and you want something. So for example, you might ask for an upgrade or ask for the difference in onboard credit. Now I've had some great experiences where I've booked a particular cruise, I've booked a particular cabin, I've seen the price have come down, I've got hold of the cruise line, and I've got some fantastic upgrades and onboard credit. Now my next tip is to focus on older ships. Now when new ships come along, everybody wants to get on the new ship. So what normally happens is the cruise lines start discounting or having lower fares for some of their older ships. So you can get a great price by going on an older ship in a particular cruise line. So what I like to do is, whenever I know a cruise line is launching a ship, I start looking at cruises on some of their older ships, because you'll normally get fantastic prices on those older ships doing the same itineraries. My next tip is also to focus on the large ports. There's huge capacity sailing out of ports like Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Barcelona, Rome. All the big cruise ports around the world have lots and lots of cruise lines sailing out of them. They have lots and lots of capacity. Competition is much, much higher. So also, as you're looking for great cruise deals, take a look at the big ports. So if you can easily get to one of those ports, focus your search for great cruise deals out of those ports. Now my next tip is, if you actually want to find a great deal, and this is a great deal particularly when you look how much you spend per day, focus on longer cruises. Longer cruises tend to be much cheaper on a per day basis. So you might actually find that you can get many more days on a cruise for the same price as a 7-day cruise at peak time. And repositioning cruises are a great way of getting a phenomenal deal. Now repositioning cruises are when ships will change regions. So for example, if they're sailing in the Caribbean, as that season comes to an end, most cruise lines will then reposition their ships, say, into the Mediterranean. And you can really get amazing deals. Now, the reason for that is a lot of people don't like them because there will be a lot of days at sea. They'll normally be 5 or 6 days at sea. So they normally have perhaps a couple of ports in the Caribbean, for example, 5 or 6 days at sea, a couple of ports in the Mediterranean. But you do get great prices on them. Now, my next tip may be less practical, but it is a way of getting a great price. In fact, possibly a free cruise. If you have a lot of friends, or perhaps you have some club or association that you run, if you organize a group cruise, the cruise line will normally throw in 1 or 2 free cabins. And you only often need to get together, 16 to 20 people to actually do that. So it's definitely a way where you could get yourself potentially a free cruise. Another way you can get a great cruise deal is by sailing on the same line. So I mentioned earlier, flexibility is important, jumping around between cruise lines. You're generally going to find deals because you're not tied to one particular cruise line. But if there's a cruise line that you really, really like, building up loyalty and working your way through their frequent sailor program is also going to be a great way of getting a great cruise deal. Now, some cruise lines will actually give you free cruises as you build up loyalty. Other will give you various discounts, whether it's upgrades, it might be extra onboard credit, internet time, and all those sort of savings on the other costs of cruising which are not included in the fare. So that's another thing to look at, is if you don't like the idea of being flexible, do go to the other extreme and actually be incredibly loyal, and that's where you'll normally get deals. One of the ways of getting great cruise deals is still, despite all the things I've spoken about, working with a cruise expert agent. Now the reason for that is, if you found a great deal, you can go to the agent and point out you found this great deal and ask them, can they better it? Now, often they can beat it. They will either have different deals or different incentives, and so they have a lot of flexibility in terms of price or other things that they can throw in. So what I like to do is, once I find a great deal that I really like, I ask my cruise agent to either match or beat that deal. And normally they can. They can also keep monitoring prices. They can also deal with the cruise line if prices have gone down to try and negotiate extra benefits, whether it's onboard credit or upgrades. But also they are likely to know the great deals that are going around. Now, of course, by following these various tips, you can be constantly looking to find a great cruise deal. My other tip that I would have is, once you've found a cruise that you like at a price that you think is reasonable, book it. Don't just keep looking and looking and looking, because it's like an eternal holy grail. You'll probably never find the perfect price. The critical thing to remember is, the more fixed you are, the harder it's going to be to find a great price. So if you know, I want to go on this very specific itinerary, on this very specific date, with this very specific cruise line, in this very specific cabin, that is going to most likely give you the worst price. The more flexible you are, the more fluid you are, the best price you're going to get. Hope you found that helpful, and it will help you find a phenomenal cruise price. If you've got any other experiences, I'd love to hear about them. But very importantly, I'd really love it if you gave the video a like, a thumbs up. But critically important, please subscribe to Tips for Travelers and get much more travel inspiration, advice, and tips.